All right, welcome to another edition of the Heavy Hitters Podcast, where we seek to gain enlightenment from interesting and, I guess, accomplished people. And joining me today is a guy I've known for a long, long time. He's an NFL consultant, but he does much, much more than that. He's very involved in the strength training world. He's one of the more connected guys I've ever met in my life. Again, was my trainer throughout my days of college and in the NFL. A guy I consider a mentor and one of the smartest folks I know, the one and only Dr. Ted Lambrinides. Ted, how are you?
Good, Rock. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So on the way over here, I was thinking about those summer workouts we used to do when I was still in the league down at Covcath or over at where did we do those at? Across the river at Thomas More. Thomas More. Some of those Saturday morning workouts. What were some of those runs we did? They were brutal. I mean, just what, 5 full gassers, 10 half gassers,
and sometimes it was 21-10s, agility drills, and so forth.
9 a.m. on Saturday morning.
But we had a great crew.
That's right. We had a lot of, just high school kids, some college kids, a couple NFL guys, me and Troy Evans, of course, and
we had Sean Alexander there.
That's right. Yeah, he was good.
Brandon Myree, Ricky Brown.
Yeah.
Who's now at Ohio State as
that's right.
Quality control coach.
That's right. He's had a nice post-NFL career himself. So so many things I want to get into today, but I guess first let's talk about, you've been involved in just the strength training world. Talk about how you got into that, what was your draw to that, and just kind of your experience getting involved in that from then until now.
I think, I get into it as an athlete trying to improve themselves for their sport. You look in the mirror and you figure, there's some limited physical options here, and you figure, how can I improve as an athlete? So that's what drove me. And as you do that, this was, back in the 70s. So you figure out, I got to go read. I got to research, what's the best way to train? Who do I need to talk to? And how do I need to approach this? And, luckily I had some great mentors myself. But, a lot of it's trial and error.
Yeah.
But that's how you get into it. And so I enjoyed it so much, I wanted to pursue that in my graduate studies.
Right. And you went to Ohio State, right?
Ohio State. Mm-hmm. So I was, while I was in graduate school, I, served at the time strength coaches. That was at the start of strength coaches in college sports. And so I served as a graduate assistant, I was the assistant. So, but it was great because you could learn the academic side of it, but then you had the application of what you learned with the athletes. We worked with the football, basketball, and other teams at Ohio State. So it was a great learning experience. It was sort of like having a co-op.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Now, what was it like in the 70s? Because that was when strength training was just starting to come about, and for the longest time was, you can't lift because you'll get bulky. But so what was it like then, and what's kind of started flipping the script and saying, hey, if done the right way, this can really help athletes? And, look where it is now.
I think if you go back and you look, I remember at one of the clinics we attended, Kim Wood gave a great talk on the history of strength training athletes.
Former Bengals strength coach, the first strength coach ever in the NFL, the great Kim Wood.
So, you talk about players that had success that lifted weights. So you had Billy Cannon, who won the Heisman Trophy. You had Stan Jones, who ended up becoming a long-time NFL assistant. But at the time, you had Nebraska was probably one of the first college teams to have a real structured and organized program. And so the individual I worked for, Steve Bliss at Ohio State, was an assistant at Nebraska.
Under Boyd Epley, right?
Under Boyd Epley. So at that time, it was, I think the training programs were more combination of Olympic lifting and powerlifting. And, and they've evolved over times now to become more sports specific with an emphasis on trying to reduce, injuries.
Yeah.
At the same time.
See, I always say that same thing too, especially now. A lot of the athletes are lifting on their own. There's no secret to that anymore. Everyone's trying to try the newest thing and all that, but a lot of the lifting, it's body maintenance and injury prevention. And yes, you want to get bigger, faster, stronger, and all that, but at the NFL level, especially, you just want to make sure you can get through a now 17-game season.
Yeah. Well, they say the best ability is availability.
There you go.
So if you, in fact, there was a really good article on. There's been two articles. PFF just published one like 2 days ago,
Mhm.
and you look at the impact on injuries and teams' wins and losses. So it's about keeping players healthy and keeping them fit. At this level, I mean, if you take a player and improve his bench press, 25 pounds, nobody cares.
Right. Yeah. Are they there on Sunday?
Are they there on Sunday? And I think I think coaches have gotten a little bit smarter with that.
Mhm.
And a lot of times, and I know talking to college coaches, like college strength coaches like Mickey, when you talk to these strength coaches at the college level, the number of kids they have coming into their program that are sort of damaged goods goes up every year. Either they had an injury that wasn't diagnosed.
This is coming from high school?
This is coming from high school. They had a surgery that was botched.
Really?
So you're looking at, if you sign, a class of 25, there's probably 5 guys that aren't going to play just because of injuries.
Wow.
And so, you have to take an approach of, maybe they did too much as a youth. And so now you've got that coming into college, and then they're playing more games now than they did 15 years ago. And if they, with this 12-team expansion into college football, you're going to have guys that could come out and have almost, 68 games.
Yeah.
If you're at one of those top programs, you're going to be between 60 and 68 games if you stay 4 years. And now you go into the NFL, so it's you have to be smart, and you have to manage people, and you have to I hate to use the NBA word, workload management. That's but I think you have to be smart, and but when you look at some of the pushback of we don't want to have camp, or we don't want to have OTAs.
Well, we just had that this week with the Bengals. Have won 6 games in 2 years. Cut 2 days of their mini camp off of a 3-day camp, and I hate to be the guy who was like back when I played, but it wasn't that long ago, right? This is 15 years ago. I mean, you got there in the off season in March and started lifting and doing that. There were OTA days, and then there was mini camp it was over 2 weeks. It was like it was I guess 8 days or so, and I understand about look, you want to reward guys if they worked hard and all that sort of thing, but this has not been a arduous offseason for any NFL team. There's been a few Zoom meetings, a couple workouts that are a little bit, and it's not the same, and a 3-day mini camp, and we can't do that.
I to your point is, this isn't esports.
Yeah.
I mean, you can get a lot out of a Zoom meeting, but you cannot get out your angles or the perception of speed that you've got to track this receiver. That's learned. That has to be acquired, in the heat of battle.
It does.
And you have to have reps, because when you're out on the field and you're looking at, what are your keys, what's your recognition, you're not getting that in a Zoom meeting. And,
no, you're not getting on that. And there's virtual reality simulation thing. No, there's nothing like the real. If you subscribe to the 10,000 hour rule, which I do, you got to get out there and do it. There's one way to get good at football, and that's to play football at that level. How do you get good at radio? Well, I'm not. I'm far from good, but you just got to keep doing it over and over and over. And I think there's a way to get reps without just totally breaking people's bodies down. 100%.
Yeah, and I think if you read Bill Walsh's book, and he was probably the master of contingency plans. So the one fact is, on every given Sunday, 50% of the teams lose. Yeah. And so you spent all week with your game plan, but I don't think enough teams have contingency plans. And, and then it's, oh, geez, we thought they were going to do this, but they did that. Well, wait, what was your contingency plan? Well, you didn't have one.
Yeah, that's why you lost.
And so when you're looking at minicamp, that's the perfect time to figure out contingency plans.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, they do this, game situations. How can we change on the fly? It's the teams that make those adjustments, not just at halftime, but in between series.
Right.
That are the ones that win a lot.
Yeah. Because you look at certain teams and say, if we're going to throw anything new, let's do it the first half, and let's do it a lot, because they'll make an adjustment typically at halftime. We'll figure out something different to do at halftime.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go back to just the strength training stuff, because as someone who's been in it and you've seen it like almost at the beginning to where it is now, and a lot of great things have happened and people are training smarter. But what is your opinion on just where it is now? Is it a place where it's too guru-y and it's not enough? Maybe just look, you got to throw some weights around. You got to lift heavy weights. You got to do all that. What's your just thoughts?
Well, I think it depends on the level, and also the sport. Because if you're, let's just say you're an NBA strength coach, God love them. Because you not only have to train the team, but you got to work with your superstars guy.
Right.
So you have to have, the right personality, right, humility, because it's not what you learn in school. NFL, I think the key to what's going on in the NFL is the collaboration between sports medicine and strength training. Is the feedback, what you're getting on the athletes. Oh, this guy has, low back, he just had a scope on his low back. We got to do this. So you have to figure out a lot of different alternatives for players. And the other thing, that the similarities between college and NFL now are time constraints. So, right now, NFL, you got 4 hours in the off season once they enter the building, and that's meetings, that's rehab, that's on the field stuff. So you typically are having large groups in. But the key is how organized is the coach and the staff, and keeping efficiency and keeping people on task. So last Friday, for instance, last Wednesday, Tuesday, I watched Penn State train, and on Friday I watched Ohio State train, and they had large groups in, but the task was efficient workouts. But players were pushed. So it wasn't that, hey, get your set in. No, there was coaching going on. There was attention to detail. And you're trying to get players comfortable being uncomfortable.
Right. Because that's what's going to happen when you play a game. It's going to be hot. You're going to get hit. You're going to be beat up. You're going to be dealing with an injury. You're going to be getting blown out. And how do you respond? And
right. And so you have to train hard enough to give your body a reason to change. And, if you could train real easy and your body changed, well, that doesn't happen that way.
I wish it did.
I wish it did. So just as anything, lessons in life, sometimes they're not easy, but you grow from those experiences. Same thing in a weight room. You've got to, figure out a way to get your body to adapt, and that's probably you got to train at a certain threshold of intensity that's sometimes not comfortable.
Right.
But some guys embrace it. Some guys love that.
I always loved it. To me, that was the fun part of it, was seeing if you could do more than the other guy, right? I mean,
oh yeah.
Look next to him, he can't finish this set. I can. You get a certain level of achievement out of that.
Well, when you look at the essence of a lot of sports is you're trying to break your opponent's will, and in order to do that, your will can't be broken easy, and that has to be accomplished in your training process.
Well said. So talk about some of the work you do as an NFL consultant. So Team A brings you in. What do they hope to gain from bringing you in? What do you deliver?
Well, what I do each month, Rock, is I provide all NFL teams with research updates. So I review all peer-reviewed research, and it could be on a variety of topics. It could be on concussions. It could be on thermoregulation, which will be important with camp coming up in several weeks. It could be on different training modalities relative to hamstring injuries, groin injuries. And then also we'll look at some research that's out there that has looked at long-term effects of playing the game of football. Do individuals have more health problems that played the game of football? And so when I usually go visit teams, it's a variety of things. Are we doing enough with our sports science assessments or tracking? Is there anything new we could look at? So a lot of times a team will call me and say, hey, our general manager read about this particular thing in the Wall Street Journal.
Now he wants to do it.
So then what you try to do is then you go through a whole vetting process. So here's the research showing it helped or it didn't help.
Didn't, right.
And then a lot of times you try to help them align how they're tracking practice relative to how the games are tracked on Sundays.
Right.
So you just sort of like a modern day librarian. Instead of the Dewey Decimal, they go over here. So they call me, and then I get the research to them.
Good, yeah. Cut out the BS and say, here's what it is, and whether it's worthy of investment or not.
Right. So they have, this time of year, they're really busy. So they'll call, hey, could you get me, these days? Our team doc wants, something on, stem cells. Boom. So you go through, do the research, send it to the team, and then do a follow-up. And so, when I send the research studies, a lot of times go, hey, Ted, I don't have time to, read these. So I have a summary page, but then some of them say, how about doing like a 5-minute, overview orally of, and so when I'm driving into work, I can put this on, and then you can just review what the research subjects were. I'm driving into work.
Oh, nice.
So
that's
that would
good,
probably
a summary of the summary.
A summary of the summaries.
I know, and I don't know if a lot of people know this, but athletes' bodies are tracked during the course of a game or in practice all the time. All their vitals, max speed, heart rate, all that sort of thing. What's been your experience and research with that?
Well, the NFL, they'll have RFID chips. So there's one in each right and left shoulder pad.
Mm-hmm.
So when the game starts, there's these RFID chips. They're on every player. They're on the officials. They're on the yard markers. They're on the pylons. So the whole field's referenced.
Really?
And then there's a chip in the ball. So through machine learning, when players line up on the field, you teach the machine when they're in this is they're in 11 personnel, and they're in a 3-by-1 formation.
Mm-hmm.
So once the game's over, all that data in terms of how many times were they in 22 personnel, how many times were they in 12, you have.
So instead of, when I played, it was
somebody
coach,
up there.
Yeah, somebody went up there and tracked it during the game, or after the game, a graduate assistant would go in a dark room and break down every single all 160 plays of the game and and do that. But now it's just boom.
Well, I think but it's all done automatically now at the NFL level.
Wow.
So it's pretty neat. Then you can see, how they accelerate on a particular route. What routes did they run? And then you can hit, and I can tell you every route or where the guy lined up and on every play.
Really?
And then you can sort through. You can say, all right, if this tight end's in, if they're in 21 personnel, what's the percentage of pass and runs? Because then you can start looking at tendencies. Well, if this tight end comes in, it's 85% run. Wow. So usually you'll have a guy in the booth. They're looking to see who's subbing. And so they'll say, hey, so-and-so's coming in. 85% of the time this guy's coming in, it's a jet sweep.
Okay. Now, can they can't track that and utilize that during the game?
No.
Right, but they can get it after the game in preparation for the next opponent. Okay.
For the next opponent. But, if you're scouting a team like, Belichick, which it's opponent-specific game planning. So what they did the previous 3 games may not have anything to do with what they're going to do against you. So sometimes what you'll do is, instead of tracking a team, you'll track the coordinator's tendency against your coordinator. It could be may have 10 years of data, how that coordinator calls. And then a lot of times you'll look at, all right, what strength does our team have that, say, Belichick played against over the last 10 years? And then let's look at the tendencies that they did against that. And so he'll probably attack us the same way.
So now as a coach, not only are you looking at that and figuring out how it helps your team, but you're figuring out, so the other coach has this data. How might he change it, or is he going to, is he going to try to throw me a curveball, a wrinkle? Man, that's high level stuff.
You don't want to have information overload, but you do.
Yeah.
So you figure out, all right, as a staff, let's decide this is what we're going to scheme for. And we're back to contingency. But this is what we're repping this week. But if we see this is our plan. But we're not repping it this week. But we have that in our back pocket. So we're not going to sit there and go, what do we do now?
Yeah.
No, this is what you're going to do. And you have to convey that with confidence to your players. Because if you show any signs of, like, panic, game's over.
Game's over, yeah. Well, it's funny. I wrote about this in my book. It was one of the chapters, Be Flexible, Not Rigid. And I recall a game we played against the Jaguars. This is, 2003, I think. And that's when they had Jimmy Smith and Fred Taylor and all that. And they're going to spread the field out and just throw the ball. So the whole week, that's what we practice. We get in the game, and they're going 2 tight ends, fullback, running back, and going to pound away. And it was like we had to be able to switch really, really quick because it was a little bit shocking. But then, luckily our coaches had enough wherewithal, had contingency plans saying, okay, hey, we've seen this before here. We're going to do this, move more off defensive linemen in the game, get the extra safety out, all that sort of thing. But, yeah, you got to be able to do that and do it quickly, right?
You got to do it quickly.
Yeah. Now, and what's in terms of just the players, how do they utilize some of the vitals of the heart rate and the top
heart
speed
rates,
and all that?
The NFL doesn't do heart rates because technically that's a biometric. So according to the collective bargaining agreement, that potentially could be a HIPAA violation because that's
really
biometric. So with the RFID chips, those are performance metrics.
Okay.
And so the Supreme Court ruled that performance metrics are public domain, so to speak. So player doesn't own performance metrics, but they own biometric metrics.
Really?
And so also I've sat in with legals from universities because you're talking about, let's have their heart rate, and then they'll go, all right, who's tracking that? Somebody in the booth is looking at it. Well, what's their qualifications?
Wow.
Because if they're making a medical decision and they don't have a medical background, that's not good.
It's not good. It didn't hold up in court real well.
So you have to sit there and go, we're going to track heart rate. All right.
Right.
Who's monitoring it? What are you going to do if you think it's high?
Right.
So then, because you get into things where you're making a medical decision, and then who else could see this information? There are teams in college, like field hockey and so forth. In soccer, they do their whole substitution patterns off their players' heart rates.
Yeah. How much workload they've had and when are they gassed?
This person's getting fatigued. Let's sub them out.
Yeah.
Football, I don't think it's to that point because somebody at 80% is better than somebody at 100%. I mean, you see guys with shoulder harnesses on. With one arm starting, you had a guy that's perfectly healthy.
Right.
And
exactly.
so I always say to the backup, I go, you got to be bad. that guy's got one arm, and you're not in the game.
You're not playing.
I would be embarrassed.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Let's switch gears. Let's talk about something. It's funny that right now, within the past year, maybe even 2 years, and maybe a lot of it's because of COVID, which kind of took our attention away, but for about a 6-year period or more, concussions in football was all the talk, all the rage from the youth level all the way up through the NFL, and obviously a lot of it came because of the data that some say the NFL hid about concussions and history and all that. What's your just thoughts on the safety of the game now as compared to what it was, and just if you have any concerns at all about concussions, head injuries, and all that?
I think a lot of the rule implementations they've made at the youth level as well as the NFL level, the research shows they've had probably beneficial effects on reducing the severity of injuries. I think anytime you're looking at the concussions, it's amazing you just focus on football, where there's other sports, soccer, ice hockey,
bicycling,
skateboards, but you can't sue skateboards.
Right.
You did that on your own.
Yeah.
So, is traumatic brain injury a problem? Yeah, it's a problem. You take somebody that does ecstasy for 6 months and you do a CT scan, they're going to have traumatic brain injury.
Right.
So, where's the public outrage on that? There's probably more people doing ecstasy than are playing the game of football.
Right. Or having more brain injuries, but no one talks about it.
Yeah. I mean, I gave a talk to, a Power 5 team a couple years ago, and I asked the players, I said, how many guys in here, have, woke up one morning on a weekend, you look at your roommate and go, what the hell happened last night, man? I get in a fight or I fall or what? You were messed up, man. I think you fell. And so I go, how many guys on this team, everybody raised their hand. I go, how many guys on this team know guys on this team that probably do that 3-4 times a month? They raise their hand. I go, so in 25 years, if you got brain problems, you're going to blame it on the game of football and not getting drunk.
Yeah.
Repeatedly. So.
Well, it's also the combination of, yes, playing the game where there's going to be some forces and blows to the head on top of alcohol use and abuse, marijuana use and abuse, pain pill use and abuse, all that sort of thing. You add it all up. And
yeah. So when you add it up, you look at, guys that, don't have healthy lifestyles, tend to be more obese. So it's all the stuff that's not good for your health anyway. And, they may be more susceptible to having problems down the road. And it's quite possible that you have somebody that has, genetic markers where, they probably shouldn't play a collision sport.
Yeah. I mean, that's what Nick Saban, he kind of summed up, and it's how I feel. But I was talking with him, this is a couple years ago before a game, and he said, there are kids where you can take and hit them in the head with a baseball bat, and nothing happens to them. You know that, right?
Yep.
There's some kids can just can play football their entire lives and not have any. I played football my whole life, and I think I maybe had two. And then there's kids that fall on the ground and bump their head and they get concussed. Is that is it fair? No, but that's the reality. Everybody is different. Is the point, and you got to act accordingly. If you're a parent and you see that, boy, my kid's having trouble with this, maybe football's not for him. But if he can play, why keep him away from this great game that gives you so much?
Exactly. I mean, you look at the way they've structured practices. I mean, NFL, you hardly ever hit.
Hardly ever touch each other.
In colleges, they've reduced it a lot. Youth football, if it's properly coached, you reduce it a lot. When you look at youth football, you're talking about 8-10 weeks. It's not like you're playing it 52 weeks out of the year.
No.
You get kids that are playing soccer 40 weeks out of the year.
Yeah, that's an all-year-round sport anymore.
So
I will say I agree with you that as much as some of the the rules and the rule changes have been exhausting and the focus has been a little bit overblown, in my opinion, I do feel that at the lower levels, the youth levels, it's better coaches have gotten involved because parents are no longer going to put up with high school Harry who just wants to see kids hit. They're not putting up with it. So you're getting a better level of coach, a better level of teaching at that level who's going to get the kids to learn the game without putting them in danger. I do think that's a very big positive.
Yeah, and I think you have to have your best coaches at your youth level.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, if you look at like European soccer, they say, what's one of the differences? They try to get their best coaches at the youth level.
Really?
Get them exposed to the best coaching early on, and that should help their progression. So, you see some of these YouTube nightmare videos of,
there's one a couple weeks ago.
And you go, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, that shouldn't be happening.
No, it shouldn't be happening at all.
Shouldn't be happening.
But I think that's anymore is more the exception, not the rule.
Right.
Right. Is that fair?
Yeah. And I think, if you look at, I think the amount of girls participating in flag footballs taking off.
Really?
Yeah. In fact, I think there's certain, they're starting that as an NCAA sport at the Division III level. And I think most of the funding's coming from the NFL.
That's cool.
But they're having Elite 11 camps for the top girl quarterbacks in Florida.
That's really neat.
So, I think the game is they're doing stuff to make it safer. But you also have to, be aware of how, your son or your daughter, if they're playing, or, how that coaching is taking place. But at the NFL level and the college level, tremendous changes have taken place. And I think it's it is a safe game.
Safer game, for sure.
And sometimes, you sit there and you watch a college game and, the targeting call, and he's thrown out for the game. That drives me nuts.
I think that intent should be a part of that equation there. And they say, you can't judge intent. Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
Okay, you can judge intent on a holding call versus incidental. So you can say, that guy, I can pretty much guarantee was trying to hurt that guy. He goes. Right. The guy who's, at the last second, the receiver's pad level changed and he happened to hit him. I just don't think that kid who worked hard that whole week to prepare for that game should get tossed out.
Right.
No way.
Right. You make it 2 penalties. My gosh, the one penalty, he's gone, and especially if it's when you look at championship games, the kid's worked his whole life to get to this point.
To get there.
It was a freak play, and he gets tossed. That drives me nuts.
Well, what is, in your opinion, I guess the kind of that line between? Cause I just wonder, looking at practices now. Let's just take the NFL, where compared to what I was doing, and it's much less contact, much less practice. There's no more two-a-days. And I don't know exactly how I feel. Part of me is like, I think there's benefit in having to go through something that sucks, right? That's what, as we talked about earlier, that's what mentally prepares you for gets your will and builds all that up to be able to persevere. But then also I do know I've experienced days where, God, we're just getting grinded here, and this is not good on my body. What's the balance in your opinion? Are players doing enough now? Because I think the other flip side is, okay, yes, we feel great and our bodies feel good, but are we becoming better football players? Where's the balance there in your opinion?
Yeah, well, you always hear the word, you got to get the players calloused.
Yeah,
well, a lot of times,
battle hardened. Yeah,
a lot of times, so when you try to get a callus, you get a blister.
That's right.
So you got to be smart, and I think if you look at when you track players in practice, and the hardest practices of the whole year shouldn't be your first 5 practices.
Mm.
So you have to allow some type of build-up, and there's not enough build-up. And I think NFL has tried to, they established a soft tissue injury reduction task force. And that is, you got to manage the first 10 days of camp better.
But coaches are now saying, wait a minute, you've taken away all my practices, all my off season. There's no more two-a-days. I got to make every practice count. We got to go. If we're not going to have multiple practices, that we have no time to softly lead into this thing.
Right. So I think one of the talks, has been, well, bring them in a week early and allow that 1 week to be just more of a conditioning build-up. So you shouldn't start day one where we just installed 60 plays. And then you know how it is. It's different than college, because college, they've been there all summer. So this is the last week for the NFL offseason. Now they've got, 5-6 weeks off before camp starts. Some of them don't do anything.
No.
So if you look at the majority of injuries in the NFL will probably occur within the first 10 days of camp.
Yes.
So you go, well, we know this is going to happen, so let's figure out ways to, manage this. And also, you got to tell the players, there's a frying pan that's going to hit you in the head come the end of July. So here's what the scripts look like for the first 5 days of camp. So here's what your conditioning should look like leading up to camp.
Mm-hmm.
And if they can't do that, then they're not a professional.
Right. Yeah, they shouldn't be on your team.
Right. So they act like, well, it's my vacation. Your whole off season's been a freaking vacation.
Whole off season.
So I think they have to have some accountability to be ready for the demands that are going to hit them the first 5 days. But coaches got to be smart about managing the durations of the practice. So they can have a walkthrough after a practice, but it has to be a walkthrough. I've seen some walkthroughs. I'm looking at and guys are running 18 miles per hour. That's not a walkthrough.
Oh, I've experienced that my whole life. We used to always joke about walkthrough isn't a walkthrough; it's a run through.
Right.
Because let's go. You're moving too slow. Well, it's a walkthrough. So, and I understand from their perspective, because walk through, some guys are kind of lollygagging, but yeah, you look around, it's like another whole practice.
Yeah, you remember Zach Streif?
Yeah,
of course. So I think he's back coaching with the Saints now.
Is he? Okay, great.
But he was funny
kid,
telling me, and he go, yeah, he would say, walk through my ass.
Yeah. He
goes, I just did 100 bodyweight squats.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, coming off the ball and, what pass rushers to...
Yeah, and he's 320, 330.
That's right.
Yeah, I just did 100 bodyweight squats, a walkthrough. Yeah, all I know is nothing.
Oh, God, that is that's so funny, because we used to always bitch about that, man. It's not a walkthrough, coach. It's almost like, just call it a real practice. That way my mind is prepared for it, and I'm in the mode of it. So.
But, I think, like you say, the purpose of practice is to improve. So if the practice is so easy that you're not getting the reps at proper game speed, and execution is off on Sunday.
Right.
So, you have to sit there and figure out these are going to be intense periods. These periods, we'll back them off a little bit. When we go team, it's on. It's pedal to the metal.
Right.
What's the saying there? All pedal, no gas, or all gas, no brake, or whatever.
Right, exactly.
So, you got to go. And especially if you got a young team.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like the Bengals got a young team, young coaching staff, new offensive line coach, whole new offensive line, young quarterback who's in,
But, it's, last year they can say, no, it didn't go. There was an increase in injuries, and when you watch the games, there was some bad football.
There was.
So there's bad blocking, there was bad tackling, bad execution. So if they could say, "Oh, it worked." No, it did work out right. If you know the game of football, you're watching, you're going, that was poor.
Yeah. Yeah. Fundamentally, yeah.
Fundamentally, it was poor, and that catches up to you as a league because that's your product.
Right. Yeah, and that is always my argument of understanding the mindset of the players, and yes, we want to take care of our bodies and make sure our post NFL lives are great and all that. Yes, you want to do that, but at what point are you also now sacrificing how good of a player you can be, which is what it's all about. This is your livelihood. This is what you've sunk your whole life into, is becoming the best football player you can so you can make the money you want to make and have the career you want to make and have the memories and all that sort of thing. But so, I mean, trying to nail that perfectly is a hard thing to do, but I just feel like there's more teams than not are now, more players than not are saying, I don't need it. We don't need to practice, or let's cut this practice short. Let's do this. But then you're not becoming as good a player as you possibly can be.
Well, the mouthpiece is usually the union rep, which usually is one of your better players. So talk to the guy that's on the practice squad. He's going, no, I got to get out there.
Yeah.
I got a limited opportunity to make a roster.
Right.
I've got to get reps. I've got to get coaching, because once the season starts, I'm not getting reps.
It's funny you say that, because with the lack of two-a-days now, that's the argument I've always made is, when now just going down to one practice, if you're on the third team, right, you're getting six reps a practice. So now, well, I'll get a few reps here, and then the afternoon practice I'll get a few. Well, now that afternoon is no longer there, so you may have 40 reps in an entire training camp to show that you can play at that level. That's not a lot.
And then, if I'm, say, switching positions and I'm a practice squad, well, that's the only time I can, off-season is the only time I can spend time with my position coach to work on my craft.
Right.
So it's player development, with your threes and your twos that lead to a better product long-term for the league. And that's why you have to have, the off-season's crucial for guys that are borderline. Most of the league's borderline.
Borderline, yes. Yeah, there's about, I don't know, in a roster of 53, there's probably, say, 30 just absolute locks for that roster. And then the other, this guy, maybe he'll make it, maybe he won't, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So
maybe
when you look at those guys, you go, well, how long's your career? Sometimes you're not looking at years, you're looking at number of games.
Right.
And so that's why it's crucial to get, to get all the options you can or time available to improve your craft. And you're a vested vet. Well, they don't want to do. Well, maybe they don't have to show up early in the off season, but those guys have to.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You're 8 years plus in the league. Okay, you can shut it down and go home. But everyone else, we're going to stay out here and get some work in.
Especially if they're going to pay me, say, we got 4 workouts that week. They're going to pay me, put me up, feed me, and give me an extra $1,000 a week. For somebody that's coming right out of college, I need that money.
I need that. Exactly. You're going to pay me to work out.
So we're going to pay me
make
to
a team?
Me? Yeah. So you're going to put me up? Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, you've got to look at it from, you have to make paradigm shifts to figure out, oh, yeah. That's why when they looked at these collective bargaining agreements, I can't believe it passed. I go, I can. I said more than half the league's minimum salary.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Let's switch gears to another topic I know you have a lot of thoughts on, because you and I have discussed it, but that's the topic of paying college athletes, whether that's through the university paying the athletes, whether that's through the NCAA, or now name, image, and likeness is kind of the one that I think that has the most steam behind it here in the Ohio legislature. There's a bill that's going through the Ohio Senate, I believe, about paying the players. Many states already have it. Alabama, I think Florida, California, or have something set up where they can do it. It just kind of comes down to how the NCAA and the universities want to do it. Your thoughts on paying college athletes?
Well, at least now they'll be legally paying them. So
some of these schools, Ted, they're taking a pay cut, right?
No,
like, wait a minute.
I think overall it will be a slap in the face for some players, just as this transfer portal is. So if you look at the numbers in the transfer portal, only like 15% that enter with a scholarship end up getting another scholarship. So you're going, oh my gosh, only 15%.
Say that again? So 15%, and how many kids are entering the transfer portal?
Well, there's a lot. What you want to do is look at the ones that enter with a scholarship because about half the kids in the transfer portal were walk-ons. So
Okay,
I,
right.
I eliminate them. So if you look at kids that entered the transfer portal,
Scholarship players that enter the transfer portal.
like 15% end up getting another scholarship.
So in a world where if you ask most people what is one of the hardest what is something we need a solution for? It's college debt, right? Killing a lot of kids. They're 30 years old. They can't pay these things off. And a player is taking a full ride scholarship in a lot of cases, entering a transfer portal, and ultimately coming out of it, 85% of those kids end up with nothing and now got to pay for their college.
Yes. God. So, they have people in their ears said, oh, you got to go on. You should be playing. Well, you're not that good.
Right.
And the reality is they don't want you.
Right.
So now you get people say, oh, my name, image, and likeness. You're going, they don't even know who you are. Yeah. Another school won't even cite a scholarship. Now you think you're going to, make money off your name, image, and likeness? So you're talking about a few individuals that will be making money from.
What do you think? You think let's take like an Alabama, Ohio State. I mean, let's take football because I think that's the majority of the kids that'll make money, like real money. 5 kids a team?
Yeah, probably.
Maybe.
But, I think little things when they're talking about this would be, hey, I should be able to make something off my jersey sale. If my name's and numbers on that jersey and somebody's buying that because of me, yeah, you should get money off of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have no problem with that.
But now how's this all going to work when it comes to, the other sports and.
Well, here's the issue. If you talk to ADs, because there was a guy, I think it was McGarrett, used to be just left. He was the AD at University of Georgia. Now he's the commissioner for the Gator Bowl. And he said, I asked, a big donor. I said, if you had $100,000, that you were going to donate to the University of Georgia athletic department, I can help fund these other sports. Are you more likely just to give that $100,000 as an endorsement to a star football player? He goes, yeah.
Really?
So now you got ADs that are figuring out, hey, some of these donors, they may, instead of just giving it to the athletic department, may give it to some of the star athletes, and we're concerned that the funding for our other Olympic sports, will be in peril.
So what's the thought process? Why would that business owner pay that star? Is that a way of recruiting the best players, or is it just?
Yeah, I would think it's a way of.
Or do they think there'll be like real return on investment in investing in a Justin Fields, for instance?
That's the business question.
Yeah.
But as you know, smart people in sports don't make rational decisions.
Right.
You get real smart people in business and get them involved in sports, and their intelligence just falls 50 points.
Right.
So you go, why would they do that? They're not really getting a return on their investment. Well, this was the money they were going to donate anyway.
So they're just doing it for, just laughs anyway. So what the hell? We'll give it to this player.
So, you get Big Booster that writes a check. One guy writes a check for Gus Malzahn to leave Auburn. I mean, who has $20 million around? Some people
There's people
do.
that do. that can do that.
So the key is, gosh, do we want them using this money to keep our star players and name, image, and likeness, or are we losing that as an athletic department? And
I see. Yeah, I see what you're saying. So now that money that comes in is not going to be able to be divvied out amongst the other 15 to 25 other sports they have that don't make money at all. It costs money, but they need that.
Right.
Now it goes straight to the player. That's it. So athletic directors are telling you that's
a concern. It's a concern. So that's why I think they want to try to. So the key to having great relationships with your key donors is crucial in communicating this.
Right.
So it's, I think it's going to take a couple years to sort out, but I think by and large, most people they don't have any name recognition, and they wouldn't really give value to
a company or a business.
Company.
Yeah.
But it's weird, the whole thing of somebody saying, well, I'm an influencer.
Whatever. Yeah.
So a lot of times it would be like, oh, this person has, 1 million followers. So Ford, let's just say Ford, may say, well, you know what? You got a lot of followers. We're not going to pay you. We're just going to give you like a car to use.
Yeah.
So, so be it. But I think there's been a lot of money invested and time and energy that probably should be going otherwhere in our country.
Right.
But I don't think it's going to be as or administratively, logistically, it's going to be sort of a learning experience to manage this. But I think long term, I don't think it's going to be as bad as people think.
My thoughts though are always come down to the locker room. How does this affect a locker room when you know many college head coaches, so do I, and it's a task, right? You're trying to get 18 to 21-year-olds to be focused and engaged week in, week out, and they're dealing with problems in school, and their girlfriend breaks up with all these sorts of things, and now you're throwing this other thing that kids got to worry about on top of it, and boy, I got to make sure I post this, or I'm not going to get my money. I don't know how that affects the players, and B, the locker room of when you have 85 kids rolling up on their rusty bicycles up to practice, and then you got 4 kids that are rolling in their brand new cars. And I know from a fairness standpoint, and I'm as capitalist as can be, but just in that amateur sports realm, I just wonder how that plays in a locker room.
It will be interesting because what you just brought up, life's not fair.
It's not, and maybe that lesson is learned.
People want to say it should be equal, it isn't.
Right, it isn't. And again, maybe that lesson gets learned earlier the hard way, and so be it. But
yeah, the thing that I find interesting is, well, on my own brand. Well, if the brand on the front of their jersey doesn't win, you're not a marketable.
Nothing.
So you've got to, if the team wins, everybody's got better opportunities.
Yeah. So
it's going to take the right mouthpiece to get that through. And I did hear something interesting along this lines, the portal and name, image, and likenesses. Mac Brown.
Yeah.
He said he watched. He says, after games now, he says, instead of me going over to try to find the other coach to shake his hand, I'm going to go find that tight end that's not happy with his playing time and say, how you doing? Boy, you should be getting more reps.
You like it here? Do you want to tour our locker room?
He says the amount of tampering is...
It's going to go. Yeah. But again, I understand both sides, and I think we talked about it at the beginning. If we're now going to be playing a 12-team playoff, and some teams are going to play 16, 17 games, it's hard to make the argument that you're playing all these games, all the wear and tear on your body, you're doing all this, but then you don't get any of that money. And I think it's an extra $805 million that a 12-team playoff will make versus the 4-team playoff. Guys are going to be sitting there going, wait a minute now. $805 million, and I can't get $2,500 to go sell autographs at the store here.
Right, and they should.
I get it.
For little stuff
it.
like that, their jerseys, their autographs. Somebody's using me in a picture, and they're selling it on the internet. They should be compensated for that.
Right. Yeah, I think so. Well, Ted, look, this has been great. There's a ton of other things we could hit on, and maybe we will sometime. But very thoughtful stuff, and thank you so much. We'll do it again soon.
Appreciate it, Rock. Have a great day.
Thanks.